Okay, so we've done a lot with HTML, and we have been introduced to cascading style sheets, or CSS, and we have been working with our elements, our tags, to create the structure. So we're going to add to this something that we call semantic tags, S-E-M-A-N-T-I-C, semantic. And I just did a search here for semantic tags and semantic elements and came up with this particular page here in my famous W3 schools. In my examples, let's just start here. In my examples, you've seen this tag called div, a divider. And before we had HTML5, web designers wanted a way to organize our tags. In other words, you've seen, I'm sure, that the div tag by itself, when we display our web page, the div tag doesn't do anything to my page. For example, H2 prints out a header tag. It does something with that text, and we can see what it's doing. A paragraph is creating us a paragraph, and when that paragraph is ending, it automatically makes a line return for us and leaves a blank space between that paragraph tag and whatever comes next. So that all those tags are doing something. But the div tag, we've seen it here in my examples, and it's not really doing anything. But what I was able to do was group together these two tags, image tag and the P tag, for formatting. So by using the div tag, I could give the parent, the div, everything a background color of gray. So by organizing our code into groupings, we're able to apply CSS styling to the group instead of just to individual tags, which gives us even more flexibility. So before HTML5 came along, we could do that with just divs, div, which really doesn't have any meaning per se. It's just a div. For example, if I put a div around this H2 tag, to you reading it, that's no different. All you're reading is that, oh yeah, it looks like another divider of some type. We'll just do it that way. And, obviously she's separating that. She's grouping it out for some reason. But when HTML5 came along, designers decided to make these more grouping tags, make tags that there were more of them that had some meaning. In other words, this makes more sense to be like a header of a paper. Don't confuse the word header. I'm going to show you this word header. Don't confuse the word header with the head tag. They're very different. The head tag is still designed for that top portion of our HTML that gives information to the browser and doesn't display the data. We also now have these tags, and just by definition, you can sort of guess what types of tags are inside of this grouping. In other words, if you saw, instead of div, you were reading this and you saw header instead, intuitively you would figure that whatever's inside here is the header type information. Now again, if I show you this if we load this in my browser, it's not going to look any different. So semantic tags are for grouping. Now I can give, however, it's not displaying anything different on my page, but now I can give the entire header something different, like a different background color. Let's say I give this background color of, I don't know, let's make this an orange. That's going to look lovely, I'm sure. And so now you can see that by virtue, I can give all of my header type information its own formatting or coloring or what have you. So it's a way to group information, is a way to group tags, but also give it some kind of meaning. So the word header is just for whoever's reading, well, initially it's for whoever's reading the source code to say, oh, this must be header type information. It's not changing my page any, except if I apply formatting. But that's not entirely true, because if you really think about well, maybe that's an unfair thing to say, but let's just say if somebody were to be viewing your web page, for example, who might be vision impaired, they would have a screen reader reading to you, which is why we put the alt tag. The screen reader could read the alt tag to whoever's seeing your page, and the screen reader could tell the person utilizing that type of software, since they can't see the picture of Daffy, the alt tag gives them something for the screen reader to tell them what's in that image. It's kind of the same thing with these semantic tags. So we use it to group our tags, but it's also information to screen readers or to people with some disabilities who might be trying to surf your web page or read your web page or hear your web page, that screen reader has some kind of information now, what type of information to expect within these tags, and can therefore relay that information to whoever's listening. So one of those tags is headers. Another one you're going to see an awful lot is nav. Guess what nav stands for? Well, it implies, again, that there's navigation in between these two tags. Remember, again, it's not doing anything different to my page, but it is definitely giving some kind of clue as to what type of information is being held in there. In other words, I'm guessing that since it's a nav, probably appropriate or agreed upon that we're going to put in some kind of navigation of like a index. We've seen this already, indexed HTML, and this is our home page, for example, and maybe we would have another navigation menu for, let's say, maybe href equals daffy.html, and then the Daffy page, or something along those lines. You get the idea. So nav implies that there's navigation that follows, and you'll see that very, very often. Div is still around, so div is sort of a catch-all for everything else, so you'll still see it. It certainly hasn't gone away, but it doesn't have any meaning by itself, and so we tend to try and when we can use some of these other tags. Main might be appropriate there. Another one you're going to see very often is footer, and I'm guessing you can figure what footer is. Page created by, I'll put my name, Kirsten Markley. And now that I have a footer, maybe I probably put that in. I don't have to put it as a P, but I'm going to. And so now what I could do with that is maybe I'll put footer. I can apply something to that entire div, and that entire div, we're going to say font size. Oh, here'll be a new one for you. 0.75 EM. EM is a percentage. And so 1, if this was 1 EM, what 1 EM means is whatever the default size for that browser is, go ahead and display it at that normal size. In other words, a 12-point font, a 12 font might not be the same size for everybody because some people make their screen bigger or smaller. So 12 might not be accurate, but if you put in a percentage, in other words, EM is a percentage of what the default is, 1 would be whatever the normal person is normally, whatever that person who's looking at that browser, whatever setting they have it is, use that setting. So 0.75 then is 75% of their setting. In other words, I want to make it smaller. I want to make the text smaller. That was a mouthful. Let's do font, align, center. I'm just giving you some other properties that you can also see. So now if we look at this, we can see that our text, does that look smaller? It's hard to say. Let's make it really obvious. That's why I stammered there a little bit. Yep, it's definitely smaller. Shouldn't be font align. I've used the wrong property, so nothing happened. So it should have been text align. And so now I can see that text align. So lots of different properties to play with, and I certainly can't teach them all to you, but I can try and show you different ones to start playing with. And I would encourage you again, as always, to look them up in W3 Schools and learn from them. But now you can see that I have my nav. Again, the nav semantic tag is doing nothing except setting these apart. So now I could apply a special setting to my nav. What shall we apply to our nav? I don't know. Let's give it a different. Background color. Background color. We'll make it really stand out. We'll make it really pop, right? That'll look lovely having it green. But you get the idea. So now I have the ability to apply a styling to the semantic tag. Again, I think I've said that plenty of times, that over and over again. I have somebody texting me frantically. I think it's my husband. Anyway, you get the idea, I hope, that semantic tags, therefore, are to help us group things together so that we can apply formatting. The groupings are giving us specific annotations, if you will, for screen readers to help the screen reader discern what type of tags they're about ready to encounter so they can relay that information to whoever's listening. And I think that covers semantic tags pretty darn well. So you're encouraged to use them, and you'll be happy that you'll learn them as we learn more about and get more and more comfortable with CSS styling.